Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here,
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
and this is number 229 in Sounding the Wonderful Shallows.
It is indeed.
So, another week. We did another
know.
weekend, didn't we?
We did another weekend.
At Scargill House in Yorkshire.
We did, and it was with a wonderful church, and we really had a lovely time. And we had some laughs, and we had some thoughts, and some, I don't know. It was just a really nice weekend.
It's just a great church we work with, wasn't it? They really look after their people, yeah.
But I was thinking, we tend to try and think of significant things, and of course we're all living in, I don't know the words really, whether we want to say fear and trepidation or excitement and anticipation about the American election next Tuesday. Yesterday it was budget day in the UK, which produces all sorts of reaction. But the thing that I find significant about this week is we went to a play, and it was a play aimed at children, and it was based on a well-loved story, wasn't it? The Tiger Who Came
I should think
to
people
Tea.
all over the world or a lot of people have seen it. Yes, The Tiger Who Came to Tea, and there's a cartoon of it, isn't there? There's also a film or a TV version of it.
Yeah, and a book, of course.
But this was on stage.
This was on stage, and we had no idea how they were going to do it, but they did it very well. But it was more than the play. It's the second time.
Just before we move on, can you just say to people how they did The Tiger? Because everyone I've spoken to about it said, how did they do The Tiger? So tell
what do you mean, how did they do
Well,
this?
you in the cartoon, you can make a tiger do anything.
Oh, well.
In the book, you can make it do anything.
Well, he was pretty clever tiger. I mean, I don't know how they did it, how they made him consume plates of sandwiches and whole cakes and various things, but somehow they did.
He was big, wasn't he?
He was very big. Well, oddly enough, he rather resembled Daddy, the postman, and the milkman.
How did you know that? He was right inside his... No, he wasn't. He was taller than the postman. They made it was him though. They made him very big, but he moved very poetically.
He did, and gently.
Very smoothly, and it was very impressive.
Yeah.
And the children couldn't wait to see the tiger.
No, well, I think that's what I loved, and the only other time I can remember the joy of children laughing like that was the first time we went to see Paddington the movie, and I don't know if you remember, but we hadn't really thought it through, and the only time we were free to go was 4:00 in an afternoon on a Saturday, which of course meant that the whole cinema was full of children, and I could not believe the joy of children laughing out loud, completely unfettered laughter, if you like, not caring what anybody else thought, just loving it.
And in the end, it didn't really matter, did it? In fact, it was only years ago, I remember sitting in a film that I was really enjoying, and there was an elderly couple sitting in the row behind me, and they both had sibilant S's. So whenever they said something, whispered something to each other with an S in it, it went... And after a bit, I got really quiet. But no, the children this time, it was just wonderful.
It was gorgeous. It is part of the whole production, really, the involvement of the children. Yeah. But it reminded me of a time a while ago when we went to another, because, I mean, we didn't just go on our own, can I point out? We did have our 3-year-old grandson.
Oh, we might have gone on our own.
Yeah, but we didn't. But of another time recently when we went to something similar, and there was a little guy with his mum and dad and younger brother just a few seats away from us, who
close to us,
couldn't access it at all. Clearly, and we use this word spectrum so easily, but way up on the spectrum. And for him, it was just a nightmare. The sound, the lights, just the bewilderment about the whole thing. And
I must say, I lived every second with his dad. He'd come armed with a little screen to distract him, and he would pick him up and move him, or he'd say something to direct his attention to the stage. But they got through it. But my goodness, it was heroic.
It was heroic, but it also reminded me, I mean, we talk so glibly, don't we, about Jesus saying, unless you become like children, you're not going to see the kingdom of God. And in a way it was like that. He couldn't see the glorious fun that was going on around. He couldn't join in with the chanting that the children were encouraged to do at points, who's that at the door? Anybody who knows the story of the tiger who came to tea, well, it could be Daddy who'd lost his keys, or it could be the milkman, or it could be the postman, but this time it was going to be the tiger, and he couldn't access any of it. And I thought, we've known people who, for all sorts of reasons, whether it's depression or just childhood or whatever, who are not able to begin to access that concept of being like a child, being childlike.
It's very odd, isn't it, the idea that people have brakes put on them quite early in life or as they grow up. That I mean, I have a bit of a thing about a certain species of fun, which I think I share with Stephen Fry, who I don't mean I know him, but I know that he's said there is a particular kind of fun which I do not enjoy. And I think
you're not a jolly guy, are you, Adrian?
No, I'm not jolly. I love laughing, I love laughter, I love all sorts of things. But
you're not jolly.
No, I'm not jolly.
No, you're not. But what were you going to say, apart from that?
Well, we used to tell a story, or I used to tell a story, if you remember, about something we witnessed once. Where we went to a christening party.
It was outdoors in the garden.
It was in the garden, and because we'd had small children, we knew all about bouncy castles. And bouncy castle, you inflate it, and once it's inflated, then everybody jumps on.
And you bounce
and you bounce around on it, and all the children leave their shoes on the ground at the front. And usually, and this is a crucial point on this occasion, they are supervised by somebody who stands at the front, who owns it, saying shoes off, take shoes. So there's a sort of control over it. This time there was no control, and because of that, the adults got on almost immediately.
Yeah.
And the children were standing around looking with awe at their parents bouncing up and down on it.
I think the children had a go first,
Well,
actually, I seem to remember. I
remember.
think we did hang back a bit.
Well, we did. I did. Certainly didn't want to be. I don't want to be on that. Anyway, so they all get on, and there was one man who was definitely not going to get on that bouncy castle, and I noticed him. And one of the things I realised I like doing when I notice somebody is to watch them as though they're part of a TV program. See what happens next. This man was dressed in a suit.
I do remember. It was a very hot day, actually.
And he looked as though he was born in a suit.
Yeah.
And he wore it like a coffin, and he was standing on the grass. And he stayed very still, but I watched his eyes. And I saw his eyes move every now and then to the bouncy castle. And I knew, even I, who am not a particularly jolly person, knew he wanted to get on to that bouncy castle. But I also knew that he didn't think he would make it. Well, the day wore on, and he may have had a couple of drinks, I'm not sure. But eventually, he moved very slowly and as though by accident towards the bouncy castle, and he sat on the front of it. And I watched him still, and he took off his jacket, folded it neatly, took his very grown-up shoes off, undid the laces, like Mummy said we must put them on the front there, and then he climbed up onto the bouncy
I just
castle.
remember those shoes, because there was a tangle, children's shoes.
That's
little
right,
funny
there was,
trainers,
yeah.
and all sorts of shoes, but not a single pair of brogues among them. Certainly not shiny ones.
Well, they were black shoes, actually.
Yes.
And they were just absolutely parallel. And then he climbed up onto the bouncy castle. He didn't clamber up. He climbed up, and he sat on the side, as though he'd found himself there by accident. And then when he felt he was sufficiently part of it not to be noticed, he got up and he started to do a rather dignified movement from left to right and right to left. But after a bit, he got a bit carried away and started leaping from side to side. And I thought, this is amazing. This man has moved into a bouncy castle world.
Yeah, I mean, on a bouncy castle, you kind of hurtle yourself backwards and forwards once you really get going, don't you? Because you hit the walls and that bounces you back and off you go again. It was a wonderful spectacle, I have to say, and the children were stunned.
Yeah, well, children, by then, most people had had a go, I think. But it reminded me of what you said about Jesus saying you can't get into heaven unless you become like a little child. And there's something to do with having it's a very sad thing, the idea that, I have a few breaks on me about my jolliness, but a lot of people laugh at me so much about it, it's kind of almost gone away. But to actually have breaks on you, like that fellow with his son, realizing that he's going to have to probably work with this for years and years and years. I'm beyond words with my compassion for those who cannot do it, whatever it is, and those who look after those who cannot do it.
I don't know what we do about it except to acknowledge that it isn't as simple as, so often we talk about, is it what it says on the can, if you like? I mean, you can't just do it. And I remember a time when we knew somebody who was deeply, deeply, deeply depressed. And we realised that rather like after COVID, where people had no taste and they couldn't taste food, the thing about a deep depression is you can't see colour. You can't see the spring. You can't access beauty. It's something like a great, I don't know, I can't think of a word, a sort of veil over you that means you can't see through it. And this little boy had that because of this condition that he has. I mean, I'm assuming he has autism. I don't know that, but he certainly looked as though he had. And he was so distressed at the same time as all the other children were so caught up in something wonderful and funny and amazing. And I suddenly felt very sad. I mean, you said about our last weekend, and we were with a church who have encouraged people to, I don't know, just to trust that it's all right to be them. And once you start trusting that really God really loves you as you are, then maybe you can relax a little bit and find that child in you if it hasn't got completely knocked out by life.
It can be a shock, I think, to discover that you can actually do, when the time comes when you realise you can do some things you thought were blocked inside you. It takes a while to practice it and get used to it and be part of it. But I can remember times when I was paralysed. I've been paralysed. I mean, working with kids in care and going on shift sometimes. I had some gifts in that work, but I lacked some as well. And one of the ones I lacked was lively group things.
Okay.
And so I would arrive and really be at a bit of a loss to know how to start it all. And I did have to practice doing things that felt quite alien to me, I seem to recall.
I don't know, we're sounding a bit dismal really, as though we can't find a way through. I'd love to hear from people as to ways in which they've found that inner laughter. And I was remembering, and I think we've talked about this before, but some of the work done with children who had experienced huge level of trauma. Do you remember in South Africa?
Yeah.
And there was a teacher really, really struggling. She'd got primary aged children who had never laughed. I mean, again, just listening to this theatre full of children laughing, or going to see Paddington as we did, and having the whole cinema just erupting every time Paddington got himself into yet another muddle. Well, these children they didn't laugh, and I'm sure there are children, we see them on the news all the time in places like Gaza. There's not a lot of laughter around, there's not a lot of anything to lift them up, and she realized that laughter in itself was healing. Do you remember? She said there was a little boy in her class, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, but it just reminded me of it, who had a very round little belly, she said, and when he laughed, his whole little belly sort of wobbled.
Yeah.
I think he was quite a round little boy. We didn't meet him. But she said that what she would do is get him to start laughing. And he made the other children laugh, and it was infectious as yawning. And soon the whole playground was full of children laughing and laughing and laughing. And then, of course, you laugh because you're laughing. Rather like you said when you were in that situation where the person behind you was, making whistling sounds. Once you started laughing, it's really, really difficult to stop.
I was quite annoyed, actually, after a while.
Oh.
But, yes.
But what she did, she said, and she realised how healing that was. And so it was almost like a laughter lesson. And she would bring it in on a regular basis so the children just laughed. So they weren't adults trying to be childlike, they were children learning to be childlike, learning to trust that inside them was built-in laughter.
It's quite confusing. I was just remembering, as you were speaking about, some years ago we made friends with a couple down in Sussex and got very fond of them. And he and I had a very, every now and then you meet someone who opens you up and you discover things in yourself that you never knew were there. They're things you hoped would be there, but you didn't really know. And when every now and then you meet someone like that and you sit with them and you think, where have I been all my life? And the eye that is you, that is not easy to bring out. Anyway, what happened once, I don't know if you were there at the time, you probably were, I'm not sure, but the couple said to me, we're going to go and meet some friends of ours and you can come with us. So I said, well, that'd be good. Yeah. So we went to the house of the other couple. We go into the house and I knew somehow that my friend would have said to them, you're like Adrian, he's very he's very bright. He often says things that are so funny.
So funny.
And, it'd be great if we can really get to... I knew he would have done that. Not maliciously, but he would have done it.
Yeah.
So after we'd been there about 15 minutes and I was sitting like a dead fish somewhere, my friend, and I know it was half humorously because I've never forgotten it, came up to me and said in my ear, "Sparkle, damn you, sparkle." And I know he was thinking, I told this people that I was bringing someone along who would make them laugh like drains. And there he is sitting on his chair like a dead thing. And I just thought, what a strange magic it is that allows the things that you love to be to come out and be that. I mean, love does it. Laughter does it. Trust does it. This church we were at, one of the great talents they have is allowing people to feel significant in community.
Because they are. That's
because
right.
they are. Yeah,
but they don't realise they are.
That's right. So they practice all the time feeling all right. And that's a
well,
great thing,
I know we've said it again a million times, but into every baby is put a sense of humour. And I know that that's true. And I know we've said it before, that there is a chuckle in a baby. It's part of the makeup of a baby, that they giggle and chuckle and smile before they can talk. So sometimes I think we feel that that's part of us that we grow out of. and that being a Christian or, trying to be an adult at all means you knock that out. And that must have been what Jesus felt when he looked around and saw people trying to be serious, trying to follow strict rules and trying to... No, come on, look at these children. And he pulled out a little boy, didn't he? And I don't expect he was the most perfect boy. I think he was just a little boy. And stood him in front of them. I mean, that is the most extraordinary visual aid that I think...
Well, at that time especially.
But not, here is a perfect boy.
Yeah.
This is a boy, just any old boy.
Yeah.
But that boy will have stood there with just a great grin on his face, I'm quite sure, at being... Well, he might have been embarrassed, really. But I can think when we went to see our sponsor child in Bangladesh, and just the laughter. I mean, there was no language connection, but she found the way
She
you
and
said...
I laughed
Well,
and laughed
she
and
found the
laughed
way
at
you
me.
said Calcutta
She did found that
very
hilarious. Yes.
screamingly
Obviously
funny.
completely wrong.
and every time.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
we had a great
and
time with
so
her. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's think about it some more. Maybe we are in trauma as a people at the moment. There's so much trauma around us, and maybe we need to just try and access the things that make us giggle.
You
the
never
things
know
that make
what
us
you've got. I mean, I was thinking about... I've often wondered about the little boy with the loaves and fishes, the story of 5,000 people getting fed and all that, and why he went there and why he was on his own with his lunch.
Well, he may not have been on his own.
I've no idea, but why had he got his own lunch? What the point being, what I was thinking was, when he went home, suppose his friends were there, right, and they said, "How did you get on?" And beforehand he'd said, "I don't really want to go. Apparently there's somebody going to talk and it's going to go on forever." And he would come back and he'd say, "There were more people there than I've ever seen in my life." And they'd say, and he'd say, "Well, you're not going to believe the next bit. I only had my lunch."
Yes.
And this man took my lunch, asked for it, took my lunch, and divided it for about 3 hours between all those people. And I don't know whether he still had his lunch in his basket when it got back to him. I've no idea. But I suppose it's also a little parable of the fact that what you have, and sparkle, damn you, sparkle. At least I had discovered with my friend and one or two other suffering people that in certain circumstances I could be the other thing in me which wasn't easy to access. So,
and that's why we have to keep looking. We have to keep looking
yeah.
and finding the child in each other, because we've got to trust it's in there somewhere. And remember, we all had a chuckle put in us.
Yeah. Well, there we are. Let us know what you think. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.